outside? Should I run and hide? How do I take my company worldwide? Do you love the law? Did you watch Hee-Haw? What's the weirdest thing that you ever saw? What's it like in court? Favorite sport? Can you help with my book report? Is my hair too long? Am I right or wrong? And do you mind if I sing along to anything? Ask Alan anything in the world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Ask Alan, the podcast. I'm Alan Crone, the CEO of the Crone Law Firm, and I've got with me today Drew Hill, who is the most important sports writer at the Daily Memphian. Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Wow, that is an honor right there. That is an honor. It's an honor to be on the podcast, but I don't know about that. We've got some pretty big names over at the Daily Memphian. I don't know if I'm quite at the top of the list, but I work pretty hard, so that's good.
Well, I was very impressed. I heard about this on the street. Very impressed with your ability to muscle Jeff Calkins aside and sideline him out of sports, just doing those puff pieces that he's so well known for.
Jeff is a great guy. Obviously, been writing for a long time. I heard, so I got to Memphis in 2018. I heard he used to be a lot tougher before I got here.
He made his boat be pretty damn tough.
I love writing about great Memphians, whether it's a sports story or anything, no matter what it's about. I was a business reporter during COVID. And Jeff really showed me the ropes on how to write about great Memphians. And it's become a big time passion of mine. And now that he's out of sports, who knows? I mean, I've been very thrilled with what the Daily Memphian has been able to provide me. And I'm working hard to one day hopefully be like Jeff Calkins. So
well, how do you like
I appreciate the compliment.
Sure. How do you like the format and Daily Memphian's kind of cutting edge, not for profit, Memphis centered. How do you think it's going over there?
I love it because I've been on, and look, I don't want this to be perceived as me taking shots, but I've worked for Gannett-based companies and I've worked at the Daily Memphian, and I just love the idea of writing not for a page view, but writing to try to provide something that people otherwise wouldn't have. And whether that be, it's not fun to recycle tweets for me. It's not fun to do those sorts of things. Now granted, sometimes it's news, sometimes social media is news. And that can be the case, but I enjoy doing more of the in-depth work. I want to write the Grizzlies stories that take people to a place that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get to, about the unsung heroes of the Grizzlies and about personal lives of players that you may not otherwise know. And even when I'm writing a game story, I want to include details in there that you wouldn't see on the Bally Sports broadcast. And I feel like the Daily Memphian really allows me to do that without having it, me having to divide up into a lot of smaller stories and really search for page views, which is kind of the direction that traditional newspapers are going nowadays. So I really enjoy it. And I actually I've worked under several different bosses there. Everybody has been great. And so I'm a big fan. I really like the model. And I mean, I've had opportunities to do other things, and, the fact that they have been treated me so well and that I do believe in the model has been a big part of me believing in this product and wanting to keep pushing it forward.
Now, you're a professional journalist, and that is a very specific vocation. How did you just decide that you were going to go down that path as because you could have done a bunch of things?
Yeah. Well, I thought I was going to be a doctor, and then I realized I'm way too dumb to be a doctor.
Or maybe way too smart.
You never know. No, I went to the University of Alabama. I did pre-med. I didn't love it. I was a math science kid growing up, and then I had a wonderful, wonderful 7th grade English teacher. Her name was Mrs. Hart. And she helped me. I did the Duke tip programs where you could take the ACT as a 7th grader, and she helped prepare me for the English portion of the ACTs. And that really changed everything for me. And I just started to kind of fall in love with writing. And it was always in the back of my head that I may want to do this. And I've always been a bit of a creative person. And I've always been a huge, huge sports fan. I can remember as a kid, trying to come up with alternate logos for NFL or NHL teams and drawing them in my notepad and going and showing my parents. And like, I've had a bit of a creative mind, and I love sports. So my dad was he was in ad sales at the newspaper in Louisville when I was a sophomore in college, and he didn't know anybody in the newsroom, but he had a key to get in the building. And one day I walked into the sports editor's office and I said, this is something that interests me. I haven't really thought about this as a full-time career until right now. But what can you tell me? Like, why should I be interested in doing something like this? And he could kind of tell I had the passion for it. And he gave me the opportunity to start covering AAA baseball games. And I started going out and covering Louisville Bats games, and really started to fall in love with it. And I'm sure if I went back and read those stories from when I was a sophomore in college, I would think they're terrible now. But I just really enjoyed being in the ballpark and doing that. And from then on, one opportunity snowballed into another, and I ended up here in Memphis in 2018. And this is my career. I can't think of doing anything else. And when you love something, when you love doing something, that can never be replaced. I give up a lot of weekends, holidays. I work crazy hours during basketball season. And sometimes you wonder if it's worth it. But then when you get up and you're excited to go to the arena in the morning the next day, while everybody else is dragging their butts to work, you realize that you have it pretty good. And so I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, you've got a dream job in two different respects. One, a lot of people would say, covering sports is a dream job. And the other part of it that may be even a little more elusive is really having a passion and a love for what you do. That is rare.
Yeah. I mean, I see it happen every day with people friends that I graduated college with that still haven't found the career that they want. Or, I have a sister that just graduated. She's still trying to figure out what she wants in her career. And there are people that are in their 50s, 60s still searching for their passion. And when you find it, it really is special. And that's pretty awesome. It's pretty great to have. And to do it here in a place that cares so much about sports, feels so lucky, because I didn't know anybody when I moved to Memphis. I didn't know a soul. It was kind of just crap luck that I ended up here in the first place. Probably too long of a story to tell on this podcast, but I feel very fortunate to have landed in a place like this. And I met my fiance, and I made a career for myself, and I'm covering the NBA. And at one point, I think I was the youngest NBA beat writer, and I never imagined that those things for me. And to make it all happen was just great,
Well, let's talk a little Grizzlies.
Of course.
You just came from a press conference. We taped this on November 28th, 2023, just to kind of set some context. If somebody's watching this a whole lot later, how do you view the current state of the Memphis NBA franchise?
They're in a little bit of desperation mode right now. I don't think that this could be a very difficult season for the Memphis Grizzlies. Can't rule that out. Certainly. I don't think that this is some kind of, death knell on their core that they have right now and what they've been working with. But it could be a very challenging season, and you're off to a 3-13 start, and you haven't performed well in 3 or 4 straight games now. And you wonder if they're going to eventually cross over the line and enter into some sort of, a more non-competitive mode. And you hope that's not the case, especially since the season came in with such high expectations. But this is a franchise that's very frustrated with the way that the season has gone. And this is a fan base that's very frustrated with the way that the season has gone. And you're seeing a lot of criticism coming from a lot of different directions. I think, not all of it is unfair. And so it has been an extreme challenge for them. I don't think if you're trying to play the blame game on why the season has been so disappointing thus far, you can't really put it on the shoulders of one individual or one part of the organization. It's been a collection of just about everything. I mean, of course, Ja with his 25-game suspension, incredibly disappointing from a fan standpoint, from an organizational standpoint. Ja is the leader of this team and they need him available on the court, bottom line. So that was incredibly disappointing. That has definitely played a role in their struggles to start the season. The injuries are just terrible luck. I mean, they fully expected that they were going to have Steven Adams at the beginning of the season. I think everything over the summer suggested that he was going to be ready to play. And then they got to the preseason, and as he started to play, the knee wasn't comfortable, and that was a big blow. And then all the other injuries that have happened in the middle of the season, those certainly hurt the team. And it becomes even more frustrating because they've dealt so well with injuries in the past, but they've never really had to deal with injuries to this extent, injuries and suspensions to this extent. And then there's frustrations with both the front office and the coaching staff. And I think if you want to have fair criticisms there, that's possible. The Grizzlies have the worst offense in the NBA right now. They're not getting the type of shots they got a season ago. Some of it is coaching, and I think they're trying to do their best to put the players that they do have in the best position. So that some of the criticism I think is fair. And then from a front office standpoint, this is a franchise that doubled, tripled down on youthful players. They had veteran role players that were performing really well and had helped them capture the number 2 seed and get them through a round of the playoffs and be competitive against a couple of championship level teams. And, but they let some of their veterans and some of their most dependable players walk out the door and bet on younger late first round draft picks. And history suggests to us that those do not pan out very often. And so while I think the franchise, especially the front office, deserves a lot of credit for finding gems like Santi Aldama and Desmond Bane and Brandon Clark, that was a big risk and probably a bit of an unnecessary risk. And so if you want to put the blame on any single item or any single thing for the start of this Grizzlies season, it's your right to do so. You can try to do so, but I don't think that it has been in one thing in particular that has really caused this season to come to an unfortunate start.
Well, let me ask you a question that probably is really unanswerable, but it's the kind of question that folks like you get from folks like me all the time, I suppose. Injuries aside and the suspension aside, I mean, those are things that on day one you really couldn't do much about, right? I mean, the suspension was a done deal, and injuries are injuries. With the personnel that they have, they're 3-13. What's the difference between what we have now and best possible scenario with that group of players? It's one thing to say to bemoan 3-13, but it's another thing to be unfair and talk about what the ceiling is on the group that you've got. What do you think the ceiling really was, or for this last 18 games or 16 games? I mean, should we be 5-13 or should we be 10-3? I don't think that's the case.
I think that 5-11 sounds a lot better than 3-13.
Yeah.
And you easily could have been, because if you look back at the first game against Portland, that was a game you totally blew. You had a 10-point lead with like 3 minutes to go and you lost the game. You're kicking yourselves over that one. And then you had the last shot for the win against Boston. You were in a close game at home against Miami. You were in a close game at home against Utah. So this team could have 5 or 6 wins right now. Would they be 500? Would they have a winning record? Listen, I like to look at it this way. There are 8 players right now. So usage rate in the NBA is every possession. If a player's usage rate basically is a possession that ends with the ball in their hands via a shot, a pass, or a turnover, a shot, assist, or turnover. And so usage rate really tells you how much a player is being used on the court. The Grizzlies have 7 players with a career high usage rate to this point in the season. 7. And they have Bismack Biyombo playing 14 more minutes per game than he did last season. So really closer to 8 players with a career high usage rate. And this just shows you what a challenge this is. And it is not trying to replace Ja Morant in a season during COVID when players on the other teams were also missing a lot of games. It is not trying to replace Ja Morant last year or Desmond Bane last year when he had the toe injury, where a couple of stars had to step up for one star. That's not the case because they're not asking 2 or 3 players to be a little bit better in this scenario. They're asking 8 players to be better in this scenario. And that is just the margins there between winning and losing are so thin that it was always going to be an extreme struggle as soon as these guys went down, in my opinion.
Yeah. I guess that's my point is, it's hard to, it's 1.6 rotation players on the sideline for whatever reason.
Yeah. So you have, let me try to do it in my head here. You've got Marcus Smart. You've got Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, Xavier Tillman, Luke Kennard, and I'm certainly forgetting at least one. So that there, yes, around 8 players basically per game, not on the court for the Grizzlies. And that's even guys that don't play rotation minutes who you might be able to use right now just because you need the bodies.
Yeah. Well, let's look forward. What I kind of hear you saying is that, it ain't over till it's over. We probably are looking at 25 really, really challenging games, no matter how you slice it. What do you think not really second half, but the 2024 part of the 23-24 season, what do you think is in store for us there? Can we pull out of this nosedive?
I think they'll be better. I think that they will be a better team. Ja changes so much for this team. I'm in the process of actually writing a piece, 2 different pieces. One about how they're preparing him to get ready for the, his start to the season. And then another just about everything that's gone wrong from a statistical standpoint. And I'm not, we talked about it earlier, not a math guy, right? Like I'm not a stats nerd as it relates to basketball, but if you dive deep enough, you can see what the problems are on this team. And the biggest change without Ja is that this team, the percentage of jump shots that they're taking a game is just skyrocketed, and they're not driving to the basket. They're not getting the dunks, layups, and alley-oops that they got a season ago. Ja will change that. He will change that instantly the moment he steps on the court. And so I think that just in general is going to make them a much, much better team. And then you add role players back. You get a guy like Luke Kennard back, a guy like Xavier Tillman back. Those players matter because they're able NBA bodies. And right now the Grizzlies don't have a lot of those. And I think that you're probably looking at a winning record from the end of the year on. The question is that going to be enough to get them into a play-in spot? I'm not so sure. I mean, it looks a lot like this hole is going to be incredibly deep when Ja Morant comes back. And that's going to make things really challenging. I think you're 4.5 back of the last play-in spot right now. You're 7 games back, 7 games back of that play-in spot by the time Ja gets on the court. That is an awful lot to ask of this team. So I'm just hopeful that we will get more entertaining basketball in the second half, that fans continue to come to FedEx Forum and support the team, because a fun atmosphere makes it better for everyone, including the beat writers. And so we'll see what happens, but I expect that it's only up from here, man. It can only be up from here.
Well, I know this is another kind of trite question, but what you say kind of begs this question. Where do you think Ja's head is going to be when he comes back? This sort of thing can affect different people different ways. Do you think he's going to be able to put all of this behind him and live up to his potential, or are we looking at a scenario maybe where, I don't know him. Is he the type of guy to take this as a injustice and withdraw within himself? How do you think Ja works out of this?
To be honest with you, Alan, I wonder about that. I don't think I have a clear answer. I want to be very careful, saying that he's just transformed his lifestyle as a result of this, because I don't know Ja like that. I'm not in Ja's house. I don't know what he's doing on the weeknights at home. But I think everyone is hopeful that he's going to come back and be the best version of himself. And from what I can see, what I do know is that, when he's in this building, he's working very hard. He has been a very good teammate in practice. He's still laughing, joking around with the trainers. He appears to be in good spirits. So it's just more me wanting to be careful than anything. But I do think that all the signs are that he's going to come back and that he's handling this well, that this is now kind of in the past and he's just trying to be excited about what's in front of him. And I think that's the mindset he should take, especially given that this season the expectations have already changed. You can't put pressure on yourself to get this team into the playoffs if you're going to come in and the team is, I don't know, 4-21. Like, that would be extremely challenging. So I hope for Memphis's sake that is the case, because I think everybody in the city kind of wants the same thing. They just want him to be healthy, mentally in a good place. They want to see him performing at a level that he was performing before any of this happened. And they want him to kind of bring the fun and the joy back to Grizzlies basketball. And he's done such a great job of bringing that in the first few years of his career, whether it was the celebrations on the bench or the exciting dunks or whatever it may be. He made Grizzlies basketball better. And it was to have, the suspension kind of hanging over a gloomy season makes it worse. And so I think everybody just wants him to come back and be the best version of himself and bring the fun back to Grizzlies basketball.
I hope he realizes how much love there is for him in the city. Not just as a basketball star and all of that, but there's so much about his backstory that resonates with Memphians, coming from a basketball program that wasn't one of the blue bloods, kind of a blue collar, lunch pail kind of thing. The stories about his dad building a basketball court to keep he and his buddies from getting into trouble, and all those things I think Memphians really can relate to, and they want him to do well for the team, but they also want to see Ja do well because he's got such a great upside, and he always appeared to me to be a great guy, a great teammate, and you hate for that not to go unrewarded.
Yeah, I had the chance to go down to his hometown, spend some time down there a week, meet a lot of the people that he grew up around, and he seemed like, now listen, that where he grew up has its challenges, just like Memphis has its challenges. But, they all talked about how joyous he was, how fun he was as a kid. And that's what captured all of us. And that's what captured Nike. And that's why he has a shoe deal. And that's what Memphis wants back so desperately. And that is his core. Like, that's his character. That's what people that have known him since he was 5 years old say that John Morant is. And, at this point, it's too late. Like, he's always going to have critics. There's always going to be critics. And he was put in a very difficult position because he rose to stardom so fast that he was not used to having critics in that way. And so it's just, he's going to have to live a different life now. It's just, things change, but you hope he can put it behind him, and you hope that he can still be that same fun version of Ja that he was before any of this. Because I know you want him to cut it out with, some of the Instagram videos and whatnot, and maybe some of the behavior that's been reported, but you also don't want to take the fun away from Ja Morant. You don't want to take away what makes Ja. And I really hope he can still capture that,
All right, let me switch gears on you a little bit.
Okay.
In-season tournament.
All right.
What do you think? Is it being, I know it's not over. Is it being successful? Is it just a gimmick? What do you think about the in-season tournament so far?
It's not for me. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think that the league clearly has let it be known, at least to the folks that are part of the league, the players and the staff, and to not crap on their in-season tournament. Let's not talk bad about our new project. And I might change my mind eventually. It just doesn't do it for me. Maybe it'll be fun to watch some of it play out in Las Vegas, but it is like, to do the multicolored courts and that sort of thing does feel a little gimmicky, and they feel like regular season games. It doesn't feel any different than that. And so for me, it doesn't really get my juices flowing. It's not really something I'm all that interested in. It would have been great to go to sunny and warm Las Vegas in December to write about the Grizzlies, but no, to me, I'm not all the way in or invested on that, and I'm interested to see how successful it may be, but it doesn't really move the needle for me.
What do you think it's missing? What elements or are there any elements you think that they could add that would make it more compelling? I mean, I think it's just right now, it's the first time that they've done it, so nobody really cares about the NBA Cup. I mean, but how could they make it so that that the average fan might get more into it?
I think for the average fan to get more into it, the players need to be more into it. And I think to get the players more into it, you have to put some sort of stakes on the line out that's not $1 million or whatever. These guys, they have money. At least the ones that are playing have money. And I think that if you put some sort of postseason stakes on the line, whether that be home court, if you make the playoffs, you have home court, or whether that be an automatic spot in the play-in tournament or something like that, I think that then you would have teams playing extremely hard to try to win an event like this, because they know that it can impact them later on in the season, and you would have intense games. But without it, it's just, I don't see this being successful. I think it may be, it could become successful in the same way that NBA Summer League is successful. And that's because they have these events at a destination city, and it's a place for NBA fans to go and mix. The difference is that Summer League has every NBA team there, and this in-season tournament is going to have 4 teams there. And it would be a fun experience to go to Las Vegas and watch the Grizzlies, and I could see Memphians doing that. But it won't be the same. It won't be the same. And if they're not going to put stakes on the line, I just have a hard time believing that people are going to really be buying into it.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of those in-season tournaments and things in sports like soccer are intra-league or interleague kinds of things, and so you've got some bragging rights for the fan. So maybe if they did some sort of international component, let some national teams in. I don't know. I agree with you. There needs
Look
to
at
be
what baseball did. Look at what baseball did. I'm a big baseball fan. Okay. Yeah. This is not the case anymore, but they used to make the All-Star game was for home field advantage in the World Series. And you could do something similar with this in-season tournament, but not obviously you wouldn't be playing for the East or the West in that manner, but you could do something like, if you win this in-season tournament, you automatically get home court throughout the playoffs. I think teams would play for that, certainly. Or if it was an automatic playoff spot, I think teams would play extremely hard for something like that. So I don't know. I think there's a way to make it interesting. As of right now, I'm going to pass on it, though.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's interesting. It would be interesting 5 years from now to look back and, if it's just completely gone by then, or if it really has turned into something. Now is kind of a tough time to handicap it because it is so new. But I was just interested in what you thought about that. Drew, we've had a great conversation. I've looked at my watch and our time is up. But thank you so much for coming on and talking about the Grizzlies and your background. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your good work in the city as well. So.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you. Thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know I've really enjoyed it. We got some good perspective on all things Grizzly from Drew Hill. If you like it, go into wherever you got this podcast and give Drew 5-star review on that platform so that we can reach even more people with this podcast. Drew is going to go bring new stories to you about the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm going to go get some justice. Thank you all for watching.